Legend has it that if you stand in front of a mirror in a dark room and say Bloody Mary 3 times, a vengeful spirit will appear. Some say she was a witch who was burned at the stake. Others say she was a young woman who died tragically. But regardless of her origins, one thing is certain: those who summon her do so at their own risk. Those who have seen Bloody Mary say she appears as a pale, ghostly figure with long, stringy hair and bloodshot eyes. She is often covered in blood, and her voice is said to be a chilling whisper that sends shivers down your spine. But it's not just her appearance that's terrifying. It's what she does to those who dare to summon her. Some say she will drag you into the mirror and trap you there forever, while others say she will haunt you for the rest of your life. There have been countless stories of people who have summoned Bloody Mary and lived to regret it. Some have reported seeing her reflection in every mirror they pass, while others have claimed to hear her whispering their name in the dead of night. Even those who are skeptical of the legend of Bloody Mary cannot deny the feeling of unease that comes with standing in front of a mirror in a dark room. There's something about the quiet stillness of the room, the way the shadows seem to dance around you, that makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's some truth to the legend. So the next time you find yourself in a dark room with a mirror, think twice before summoning Bloody Mary. You never know what kind of horrors might be waiting for you on the other side. But if you are in for some fun, here are a few stories for you. Story number 1. 'Twas a dark and stormy night, the kind of night that sent shivers down your spine. A group of friends had decided to gather at an abandoned house on the outskirts of town for a dare. They had heard the urban legend of Bloody Mary, a vengeful spirit who would appear if you stood in front of a mirror and chanted her name 3 times. As the group of friends stood in front of the dusty mirror, they nervously whispered, "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." Suddenly, a cold wind blew through the room, extinguishing the candles they had lit for light. The room went dark, and a feeling of dread washed over them. Suddenly, they heard a sound like the scraping of fingernails on the mirror. Then, a pale, ghostly figure materialized in the mirror, with long, stringy hair and bloodshot eyes. It was Bloody Mary, and she was furious. The group of friends screamed and tried to run, but the doors and windows had mysteriously locked shut. They were trapped with the vengeful spirit of Bloody Mary, and they knew they were in grave danger. One by one, Bloody Mary began to take her revenge on the terrified group. She dragged one girl into the mirror, leaving no trace behind. Another boy was found with his throat slit, and a third was found hanging from the ceiling. The final member of the group, a young woman named Sarah, managed to escape the house alive. But she was forever haunted by the memory of that terrifying night. She knew that Bloody Mary was still out there, waiting to take her revenge on anyone foolish enough to summon her. Years later, Sarah was found dead in her bathroom, the word Mary etched in blood on the mirror. It seemed that Bloody Mary had finally caught up to her and had taken her revenge in the most gruesome way possible. The legend of Bloody Mary lives on to this day, and those who dare to summon her do so at their own peril. The vengeful spirit of Bloody Mary will never rest until she has taken her revenge on all those who have dared to cross her path. Story number 2. It was a hot summer night in the small town of Millfield. A group of teenagers had gathered in the old abandoned house at the edge of town to play the game of Bloody Mary. They were skeptical of the legend, thinking it was just a silly game that kids played to scare each other. But as they stood in front of the mirror, repeating the name Bloody Mary 3 times, they felt a sense of unease wash over them. Suddenly, the room went dark, and the air grew thick with a foul stench. The mirror began to shake, and a faint whisper could be heard in the darkness. The teenagers tried to run, but the doors and windows had somehow become sealed shut. They were trapped with whatever was in the room with them. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the mirror. It was a woman with pale skin and long, stringy hair. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her mouth was twisted into a cruel smile. It was Bloody Mary. The teenagers screamed and pleaded with the spirit to let them go, But Bloody Mary had other plans. She began to stalk them through the house, moving silently and swiftly like a predator in the night. One by one, the teenagers fell victim to Bloody Mary's wrath. She appeared out of nowhere, dragging them into the darkness with a wicked grin on her face. Some were never seen again, while others were found the next day, mutilated beyond recognition. As the sun began to rise, the last surviving teenager stumbled out of the house, covered in blood and shaking with fear. He never spoke of what he saw that night, but he never forgot the sound of Bloody Mary's laughter echoing through the halls. From that day forward, the old abandoned house was known as the home of Bloody Mary. People in Millfield avoided it at all costs, too afraid to face the vengeful spirit that haunted its halls. The legend of Bloody Mary lived on, a warning to all those who dared to play with dark forces beyond their understanding. For in the end, it was always Bloody Mary who came out on top. Story number 3. It was a warm summer night, and a group of kids had gathered in the park to play their favorite game, Bloody Mary. They had heard the legend from older siblings and friends, and they were excited to try it for themselves. As they stood in front of the park's public bathroom mirror, they chanted Bloody Mary 3 times, giggling and nudging each other in anticipation. But as they waited for the vengeful spirit to appear, they realized they were not alone. The park had been deserted, or so they thought, but now they could hear the sound of footsteps coming closer and closer. Suddenly, the door to the bathroom burst open, and a figure appeared in the doorway. It was a woman with long, stringy hair and bloodshot eyes. She was covered in dirt and grime, and her clothes were torn and tattered. The kids screamed and tried to run, but the woman blocked their path. She began to speak in a low, guttural voice, warning them to stay away from her park. The kids were terrified, convinced they had summoned the real Bloody Mary. They begged the woman to let them go, but she only grew angrier. She began to move towards them, her hands outstretched as if to grab them. The kids were frozen in fear, unable to move as she closed in on them. But then, something strange happened. The woman suddenly stopped and looked up at the night sky. A strange, otherworldly light filled the air, and the woman seemed to be lifted off the ground, disappearing into the darkness. The kids were left alone in the park, shaken and confused. They never spoke of the incident again, but they never forgot the fear they felt that night. Years later, as they grew older and wiser, they realized that the woman in the park was not the vengeful spirit of Bloody Mary, but a homeless woman who had taken shelter in the bathroom. They felt ashamed for how they had treated her, and vowed to never play with dark forces again. The legend of Bloody Mary lived on, but the kids learned an important lesson that night. Sometimes, the scariest things are the ones we create in our own minds. If you are still alive, please hit that like button. See you in the next video.